Hi everyone, and welcome to our monthly WebRTC Fiddle. This time we're going to talk about how to understand on-ice candidate error. So Philip, you wanted to do this one, so I'll directly start with you. You take us through the motion and I will ask questions and bug you.
Yes. So let's look at the code. We start by setting an array of ice servers, creating it, then creating a peer connection with it.
I see you picked the Google one.
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone loves the Google Sun server for some reason.
Yep.
And then we create the peer connection and we set two event listeners on it. The first is for the ice candidate event, which is this one.
So when we get a candidate, you simply log it to the console.
Yes. And when we don't get a candidate, that means the gathering is finished, which historically means that the candidate property on the event is not set. And the second one is the on-ice candidate error, which we simply log to the console.
Okay.
This is only implemented in Chrome and the new Edge at the moment. And it might come to Firefox someday and whenever Safari picks it up.
Probably 3 years from now.
We'll see. It is not that important, as we'll see. Then we create a data channel, so we have something in the SDP which starts candidate gathering. Then we call create offer, which creates an offer. Then we call set local description with that offer, which starts the candidate gathering.
Okay.
So let's run this. So what we can see here is that we get a couple of candidates. First, a IPv6 one. It's a host candidate, so that's a local IPv6 address. We get a IPv4 address, a local one. We get an error event, which we're going to talk about soon.
Okay.
And we get a server reflexive candidate here, which gives you my public IP address and tells you that the other address this is associated with is my IPv4 address.
So essentially, this is what we received from the Google Sun server.
Yes.
Okay.
And we get a TCP candidate, which is not very useful for us because we're not going to use TCP unless we're talking to a server which supports IceTCP. We get that for both IPv6 and IPv4. And we got this ice candidate error event. So if we expand that one, we can see it's from an obfuscated IPv6 address. The error code is 701. So that's a very generic error. There are a couple of errors that can have this error code, and the error text is stun host lookup received error. And what this means is that Chrome tried to look up the IPv6 DNS record for the stun.l Google.com server and got an error in that process. Probably because my DNS server doesn't like resolving this IPv6 address.
Okay. What should I do when I get this error? I mean,
well, the question you should ask is, did you get a server reflexive candidate, which is your goal if you add a stun server? And we got one here, down here. So in this case, we can ignore that error because it's more for your information and it's not fatal.
Okay. Okay, so as long as I get connected, I should ignore these messages, or should I ignore them if I simply had other candidates that I expected to receive?
Yes, you should ignore them if you have the candidates you expected to receive.
Okay.
If things fail, then this might provide you with additional debug information.
Okay, so essentially for us at this point in time with this kind of an error in this kind of scenario, it's useless.
It's useless, but there are some cases where it's actually useful. So let's go to another Fiddle. Let me clear that one. And compared to the first Fiddle, we changed it to use a turn server. And I made up credentials, because this server doesn't support the username foo in the credential bar. And if we run that one, you can see, oh, we got a server reflexive candidate because every turn server acts as a stun server as well for UDP. And we got a number of errors. So we have the same errors as before, these two ones. And we have another one which has a different error code, 401, which is a classic. There was an error with authentication code, and it says unauthorized. So this tells us that we tried to talk to a turn server. Since we got a server reflexive candidate, we know we can reach the turn server. But then we got an error which tells us, oh, we used the wrong credentials.
Okay, so we have a callback on onicecandidateerror that exists only in Chrome and Edge. It's not that useful unless you're trying to figure out issues of actual connectivity, and probably, I guess, not even for customers, but mostly as you develop. Would that be a correct assumption of where this makes sense to look at?
Yes, if you debug customer issues, you typically look at what kinds of candidates they gather. So if you have a turn server that is properly set up and uses UDP, TCP, and TLS, you would always do a different thing and check if they got UDP, TCP, and TLS candidates from the turn server. If not, their network was probably blocking things somehow.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Fiddle.
Thank you.
See you next month in our next Fiddle.